I'm sure a lot of you know Sally already. She has been in the industry for, I know it's decades, you can tell me how many.
Well, I did my photography degree in the late 80s. And when I came back, I worked here for a little while. So I sort of started probably here at about 94, 95.
Okay. And since then you've been a photographer, an artist, manager, and consultancy is your thing right now, which we'll learn more about, and your directory. But for me, the defining characteristic of Sal is that she genuinely cares about matching the right people. So we at Memento Pro have used Sally's services to find people and producers, video producers and things like that. But I know that you understand and know all the people personally who you work with, and you like to matchmake based on personalities and the way people work together. And I think that is your defining characteristic or differentiator.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, I think what a lot of people forget about is that we're in the world of communication, and without communication and without people getting on with each other, it just makes life really tough, and it's really hard to work with people that you don't have a connection with. So it is a really important part. Even in this online world, I've always been an advocate of the one-on-one. And I must admit, when the whole COVID thing started to happen, it was quite terrifying, because I thought, my God, everything I do is in person. I'm really tactile, and anyone that knows me, I like to hug people and care and look and so learning about how to deal with COVID's been a really interesting thing for me. And in fact, these whole Zoom things, while it's a little bit daunting that I can't see everybody, I can see you, Lib, we're actually in people's living rooms. So all of the consults that I've been doing in recent times, you're in people's rooms. I had this really fantastic meeting with a creative director at one of the big agencies, probably very early COVID, and we were talking. There was a panel of us talking, and I was looking in the background, and I could see a Barbie doll sitting on the back of the mantelpiece behind him. And he was really serious and really grown up. And later on, I rang him. I said,
"The Barbie doll on his shoulder.
Was that a Barbie doll on your shoulder?" And he goes, "Are you joking?" And he turned around, and there was this Barbie doll. And I think it humanised us a lot more, or him a lot more, which was really, it was funny. But yes, it's been a really interesting 25 plus years for me. All my life I grew up wanting to be a photographer, and understanding. So I went to RMIT and I studied photography, and I learned a lot about photography when I was a student. One of the things we didn't have a lot of there, though, we just certainly didn't have the internet, we didn't have telephones. We had lots of fantastic books, and we learned a lot about the world of photography. It was a very commercial advertising photography course. So assisting was a really important part for me once I left university. My first job was actually with a bus touring company, photographing people up and down the east coast of Australia on German camping holidays.
Okay, that's very specific.
Was very specific. I can't even say that, specific. But what was really funny about it was that I had to learn how to communicate with people when I didn't speak their language. So that was kind of interesting. But communication, it all got back to communication. Following on from that, I started assisting a fantastic photographer who sadly just recently passed away, Rick Wallace. And at my wedding many years later, my dad had said to me all her life she wanted to study photography, and she learned a lot about photography at uni. And then when she started working with Rick, I learned a little bit more about photography and a lot about life. And that was a really important part for me, that assisting process, because the photography industry, and I have learned certainly then, but over the course of 25 years, it is never just about photography. It is almost about everything else, and the photography is the easy bit. It's how do you approach people? How do you quote on jobs? How do you communicate with people? How do you present your work? Should I have a website? Should I have a folio? Should I have an online? And it's not a new question. It's been a question that's been, well, in the original days, there was no website, so that wasn't a huge problem, but it was how to present a portfolio. And so after I assisted for him and I learned an awful lot about life and about photography, I went overseas and I worked for 6 years. I did a whole lot of jobs. I worked in television. I worked as a door bitch in a nightclub. I did a whole lot of stuff that was not photography related, but it was all very people related.
Yep.
when I came back to Australia years later, I started teaching photography at RMIT. And I didn't just talk to photography students, I talked to advertising students as well. And it was about going into the industry. My job was to go into the industry, find briefs that had been worked on by the advertising agency, start making networks and connections, bringing them back into the uni, briefing the art director and advertising students who would then brief the photography students. They would pull a team together, stylist, makeup artist, producer, photographer, art director, and then they'd present to me. And it was a subject started by a wonderful man called Gus van der Heide, who I worked side by side with him, and ultimately he retired, and then I took the job on. And it was the very first time that I realised the power of networking. So back then, and I think RMIT probably does now, back then you didn't get paid to go in and do talks. So it was about creating, or not lecturing, but getting guest lecturers to come in. So it was about talking to people in industry and getting them feeling confident with you to invite them to come and talk to your students or to give a brief that they had worked on, and started to build a network. During that time, I became an agent for photographers. So it was about 7 years since I'd graduated. And a lot of photographers that I'd graduated with had were quite successful, and they wanted somebody to show their work around. And back then there was probably 2 or 3 photographic agents in the country, of which I was one of them.
Yeah, right.
And so that was about taking portfolios out to anybody and everybody that used photography. So very early on, I was like, right, who do I need to see? So there's art directors, there's advertising agencies, graphic design studios, there's private schools, government departments, direct clients. And it was still before the internet. So I had a phone book and I just went through names and I rang people, and I got very good at getting through the receptionists that are, they're tough receptionists, and getting in there and building a network and showing people work. And the reason I tell this story is because it was a process, and how do you show the work, and who do you talk to? And one of the best things I learned throughout this period of time was I went and saw a creative director, and she worked on one of the biggest car accounts in the country. And I went in there with a car photographer, right? Of course. And she came in, she looked through it, and she goes, "It's a really beautiful walk, but why did you bring me a car photographer?" And I went, "Because you're working on a car account. That's your job. That's what you do." And she said, "Yes, but do you know what, Sal? I know who I want to work with. I have the car photographers that I love to work with. So what I want to see from you or from other photographers is portrait photographers, landscape photographers, fashion photographers, photographers that I could possibly think about using my cars in their shoots." Right? And that was a real moment for me with photographers' folios, because I thought what I'd done right until that point was I tailored them. I'd say, right, let's look at, because now we've got websites starting to happen slowly, or we were able to research through, magazines and books that we knew that these companies had been in, and we'd ring and say, "Oh, who were some of your clients?" I mean, it was quite raw, but we would know who they were, and we'd go, right, cars, food, fashion, and then you'd tailor them and you'd take them in. So at that point, I sort of realised that you can never second guess what somebody wants to see in your portfolio. And that is a really important part that I've worked right throughout the last 25 years with. And what you need to be putting in your portfolio is what you want to be shooting, and telling your own story, because you don't know if you're walking into a design studio, an advertising agency, whether they've just won a client yesterday and you've done all your research and you know that they do all these things, but you have no idea that they've won this client. They haven't told anybody. You might walk in and they might go, "This is the person that we've been looking for," because we love all our photographers. Because also what you've got to remember, everybody you show your portfolio to, they probably already have at least one, if not 2 or 3 favourite photographers that they love to work with. So what you have to offer them is something different. And the only thing that is different from anybody else is you and how you see things.
Yeah.
And that is what's really important about a portfolio, is putting your own personality into it and telling your own journey. So throughout this time of showing portfolios, I learned a lot. And I went from, and it's a little bit like fashion, I went from showing, I had a briefcase that had a light box in it, and I'd walked in like Get Smart, and I'd open up the briefcase and I'd put the slides on there and I'd plug my briefcase in, and it was all woohoo. And they were 5.4 or 10.8 slides that I had mounted into what was called leathercraft back in those days. Do you remember leathercraft? And then we went from that to, right, what we have to do is we have to show portfolios on how the work's used, so like tear sheets. But in fact, what happened with tear sheets was really interesting because it became about everything other than the photography. It became about the design, the layout, the typography, and I'd be there going, yeah, but look at the photo. Can we just look at the photo? And then people would want to show magazines that they'd been in and editorials because I was so proud of them. And they'd open up a magazine and they go, oh God, this is fantastic. And then I'd be going, no, it's actually not that picture. It's this picture down here that's theirs. And so again, I was just refining how people wanted to see portfolios and how people wanted to be inspired. Because what we've got to remember is, as a photographer, as a commercial and advertising photographer, you are the conduit for other people's ideas. It's probably the sole reason why I chose not to continue as a commercial photographer, because I didn't like shooting other people's ideas. Okay. If I was really to do a workshop on myself, which I have numerous times, that was really what my problem was as a young photographer. I think it's a hangover from being in a private girls' school, but that's a whole other story. Throughout that period of time, I had a client that also worked with a company that was doing what I was doing, but for art directors, copywriters, graphic designers, and what was just coming in was multimedia artists. Her and I got together and she actually took me into her organisation. So that was sort of about 1997. And so then what it did, it threw me really into the world of advertising and design, which was also fantastic because I was then helping those guys put their portfolios together and helping them get freelance jobs and in turn getting photographers work. And so I again had the ear of these people of what they wanted to see in photography and also how they showed their portfolios as designers and really got to understand layout and shape and form and understand about books and bookbinding and portfolios. And back then, everyone was going to New York and getting the Chicago screwed leather folios that were coming back. And I was like, whoa. So I did my research and found this great company here in Australia that was doing that here in Melbourne. And we got involved with them, or I got involved with them.
Irwin and McLaren?
That was Irwin and McLaren. That is no longer around, but the boys from Irwin and McLaren are with Bambra at the moment.
But Bambra is no longer.
I know, but there's still, I know. So that's why I didn't know what to say. But yes, so Bambra is, so we're just waiting to see where the boys are going, actually. But they were just really around the corner from me here in Richmond in Melbourne. And I've done years and years and years of work with those guys. And it was really interesting. And yes, it's been an interesting time throughout.
Interesting you talk, Sal, about that transition from, the photography world, working with the photographer, into the design world and the multimedia elements, and then the digital elements kick in. And, I suppose that is, being bookmakers ourselves, it's been interesting to see the change in use of portfolios over the last 15 years. And, there really was a period of digital obsession. Especially when Instagram, came into its own and became like the perfect way for photographers to present their work online easily. But what I found interesting over the last few years is that from my perspective and from some reading I've done, there's almost like a renaissance of print for people, because people have become so, every day we're sitting looking at screens, scrolling through things. We see a million images or thousands of images a day, that the tangible, tactile nature of portfolios actually has a way of cutting through all these digital communications that we have now.
Yes, absolutely. I was going to head into that area, so it's a great segue, Liv. Well done, thank you. I was probably waffling. Not that I'm one to waffle, but so in the showing of portfolios, it was like a fashion. It went from showing the slides or the transparencies. Then we had floppy disks, and everyone wanted a bloody floppy disk and a CD. And then we're all doing CD calendars, and you go into an agency and they go, oh, sorry, I can't, my website's not you, the internet's, it was a nightmare. So I actually never never went down that path, because what is so beautiful about a book or a portfolio is that very tactile nature. And people do this. They look at this and they sniff it and they open it up, and
I like book sniffers.
Yeah, I love book sniffers, and they get really involved in it, and it becomes an extension of who you are. Back then I was certainly doing my showing other people's portfolios, but I very quickly learned that it didn't matter whether they liked me, it mattered whether they liked the photographer. I was able to talk about photography, and I was able to talk about their work intimately and about them as people. But at the end of the day, the creatives or the companies wanted to know who the photographer was. So then it was a matter of making sense out of that, and working with the photographer on how to show their own portfolio. And just before that, I was going to say, I was very fortunate to be involved with a guy who you all know called Nadish Nayaroji. And Nadish was the first photographer to bring a digital camera into the country in about 1996. And he had stables at the back of his house in Caulfield, and he had this massive digital camera. It was as big as a room. And my job was to go out to the industry and bring creative directors and designers in to sit and have evenings. So I'd stand there and there with cheese and wine and hand it all out. And Nadish would say, you know, this is the future of photography. And everyone would be going, really? And saying things like, but we do a lot of travel. You'd never get something like this on an aeroplane. And, you know, and it could only shoot still life. And it had...
how big are we talking?
Oh, we're talking as big as a room. It was massive. It only used a continuous light source, so you could only use film lighting on it. It had 3 cyan, magenta and yellow, I think that's right, cyan, magenta, blue, doesn't matter, 3 lenses, and you could only shoot still life, and it was massive. And we
went through limitations.
Pardon?
A few limitations.
Just a few limitations. People go, it's never going to shoot fashion. It's never going to be able to shoot people. And, you know, it wasn't that long ago. And Nadish is going, this is the future. Like, he was just such a visionary. And this is the future of photography. And, you know, you laugh now and you look at it and and so we were part of that whole massive, we were going out of the darkroom in the universities and trying to teach people how to do this. And we were also trying to make sense of how we were going to show this and show digital work. And photographers were spending a lot of money on, you know, buying equipment and convincing clients. So, and this all relates to portfolios, because what I said in the very beginning about, you know, making a cracking portfolio is hugely important, but it's one element of being a fantastic photographer. And the other elements are very much about negotiation skills, educational skills, communication skills, and it's very much about the person. And you don't all have to be out there and loudmouths and, you know, confident, and you have to be confident, but you don't have to be trying to embrace everybody and convince people of things. And that's a really important thing with the portfolio. It's, you are selling yourself as a photographer, so you don't have to convince us you're a photographer by showing us that you can do a still life if that's not what it is that you want to be doing. And I think that's a really important thing. I see a lot of portfolios that are coming through to me that I'm working with photographers on, where they are either sectionalizing areas and trying to make sense of it. So this would be my portraiture area, and this is my still life area, and this is my architectural area. And so what I talk to them about is, okay, so the problem with showing a portfolio like that, whether it's online or in person, is that by the time we get to architecture, we've totally forgotten that you've done portraiture. So a great portfolio is telling us your story and your journey as an ebb and a flow all the way through. Ebb and flow. So we've got people and architecture and food and people and architecture and food and all the way through. And I think that that's a real skill set. And Sharon and I were having a laugh about an image that I saw of hers before. One of the things I see with photographers all the time is that they have an emotional connection to all of their work. As a photographer, we wear our heart in our sleeve, and everybody does. Photographers overthink things all the time. That's okay. But I come in with a really fresh set of ears and eyes, and I have no connection to any of these images. And I can put images side by side that might be from 2 totally different shoots, but because of their colour or their pattern or their shapes or their warmth, that they will connect, or even because of their because they completely jar against each other, they work. And so that's been a really key factor in creating a portfolio. And to get to me creating these portfolios, I'll just finish what I talked about before. I worked for this company for a long time, for about 5 years, and I learned about recruitment, and I learned about setting up advertising agencies and design studios and what to put in their portfolios and what they wanted in photographers' portfolios, and how photographers could talk to these people. And how quoting was so different with design studios as it was with direct clients, as it was with advertising agencies, and how budgets worked, and how print was set up, and how, you know, if anything went wrong in those days, always the photographer was blamed. It was never the printer. And, you know, it was all of these really interesting things. So it made me sort of be very, it was very important for me to be able to show a photographer's folio in a really clean way. And that was one of the first sort of scenarios that came across to me when I felt that I needed to help photographers with their portfolios. And I had finished working at this company, and I was working with a design studio, and a photographer had come in to show his portfolio. And I was kind of like the door bitch at the design studio, and I'm going, nobody can see it unless I see it first. And I looked at it, and, you know, I opened up, there was a squashed moth on the first page, and the second page was all held together with sticky tape. And by the third page, I was flipping out. And I said, we can't show the designers. You're a beautiful photographer, but, you know, so I haven't. And what happened, this is around the early 2000s, what had happened was, in Australia, and particularly in Melbourne, photographers hadn't had to show their work a lot, because they got clients who liked to work with them, and they just would continue. And they go, yeah, use Jim, use Sally, they're great, use them. And it was a lot of word of mouth. Right? Still occurs now, but not as it did back then in the 90s. So this photographer said to me, what would you do? And I said, well, I don't know, let's have a look. So we pulled it all apart.
Remove the moth.
With the moth, got rid of the moth, and pulled it all apart, and I laid it all out, and I started to design this new portfolio and book for him. And he showed someone who showed someone, and sort of the rest is history. And so that was in 2002 that first book happened, or portfolio. Yeah. Before we were doing online portfolios and looking at websites. So understanding the history of photography, understanding the history of how to show work, understanding that we are all about communication. It's what makes you somebody that people are going to want to see, whether it is in person or whether it's online. Yeah. Sorry, did you have a question?
No, I'm just agreeing with everything, because so much of what you have said applies to, like, I come to it from just photo book design in general, not necessarily portfolio, but it all applies. And having seen over the last 15 years, see thousands and thousands of books come through, lots of portfolios, there are so many of the same issues that occur in books. And there's you know, I see such brilliant photography, and I'm going to refer specifically to photojournalists here. I don't know why, but I love photojournalistic and documentary photography work, but for some reason, they in particular are fantastic. And this applies to most photographers. You know, you're used to composing within the frame of an image, and I would have thought that would, you know, that would extend to design across a double page spread, and then, you know, sequential pages in a book. But very rarely does that happen. And for some reason, the photojournalists are the ones who get it the most wrong in books that I've seen. It's like, your work is so incredible. Oh, I figured it out the other day too. A lot of them, you know, they leave the editing. The editing is done by the editor. They take the shot, and then after that, the rest of it, the presentation and everything, is left to the editor. And
you know what, Liv? Sorry. No, nothing's really changed. Back even in the day, as a full-on lecturer at uni, and we'd be looking at proof sheets from the darkroom, and the student had printed frame number 6, when really they didn't really get their they didn't get their act together until frame 25, 26, 27 or frame 12 if they're on, you know, and you'd look at them and go, that's not the shot, this is the shot. And even now, so when a photographer comes to work with me, I will say to them, I want you to go to Officeworks, print out on 6x4-inch prints, you know, 200, 300 images and bring them in, because ultimately many of them have picked, it's really hard to pick your own images, or you might have a shoot where you've done, you know, a whole series and you really love that shot because at that particular moment the wind blew and you fell in love with the model, or you whatever happened. And whereas I come in and sort of go, it's a great shot, but this one's so much better because this tells the story. And it's about understanding how to get a message across, you know, short, sharp and concise, but with emotion. And not getting too emotional about it. Whilst I'm a very emotional person, I'm not emotional about other people's work because I wasn't there on the day of the shoot. I had one guy years ago who had this fantastic shot in his folio. It was the most beautiful fashion folio. And then there was just this hilarious shot of this woman in there. And I said, what is she doing there? And he said to me, that is the day I fell in love with my wife. That's my wife. And I went, we'll get it out and put it on your wall in your bedroom because it doesn't have a place in here. And he goes, but it's my good luck charm. And I said, well, maybe just we'll put it in the back here and we'll hide it. And we're not going to have that in your folio.
Yep, I think emotional distance and time, like between the shoot or when you've taken that photo and when you go through the process of culling is a very big difference to what you end up with in your portfolio.
Yeah, it is a huge process, and being able to come in and just overview it all. I lay it all out on the floor and I'm looking at colours and shapes and form and telling a journey, and listening to the photographer first of all about where their trajectory is with their career. Or so I'm not just dealing with young photographers, I'm dealing often with photographers that have fallen out of love with photography. They've got stuck into working in the same area, maybe it's real estate, or they're doing the same kind of portraiture, and where can they go from there, and how do you get your portfolio from looking like from this to the next level. And as a photographer, it's a bit like websites these days. I change my website probably about every 12 to 18 months. I update it to make it fresh. We've always got to be fresh. Yep. And that's a hugely important thing. The other thing that I see a lot with portfolios is that people do two things. They either put way too much in or they don't put enough in. So there's got to be that really fine line about taking us on a journey, having an ebb and a flow, but wanting a little bit more, but not being left going, oh, is that it? Yep. So I sort of recommend roughly about 20 double page spreads. Okay. In 20 double page spreads, you can get a really good story that's coming through. You're not boring people, but you're also not leaving them left going, oh, is that all we've got? You know, don't you hate it when somebody looks and sort of wants to just keep doing that? So 20 double page spreads, you can tell a great story.
And question, Sal, on those 20 double page spreads, do you suggest, or do you have, can they be an image on each page or across the page, or do you care? Is it about the ebb and flow? Like you can change it up?
You can and I've got some examples that I'm going to show you. Cool. Do you think this is a good time to show them now?
Yes, I think just before we jump into that, we've already got some questions coming up, which I am fascinated in knowing the answers to myself. But I'd just like to acknowledge Sharon's comment that she thought that the squash moth could have been quite an interesting point of difference. Good point.
Good point. It's a good story, Sharon. But to answer your question before you go into these, every single photographer that I work with and every single photographer out there listening, you have to have your own point of view, and there is no right or wrong in a portfolio. And that's what I want to be really clear about. There is no cookie cutter. It should look like this or it shouldn't. It should be in leather hat back, or it should be saddle stitch, or it should be this or it should be that. Yep. It's like, what is the kind of work you're doing? Who is it that you're wanting to appeal to? Yeah. And how is it that you're wanting to show it? Sometimes it's all great big full bleed single pages. Other times it could be smaller boxes with lots of white space.
Yes.
It could be a combination of those. What we don't want to do is we don't like, you vomited all over your folio and there's just stuff everywhere. It's got to have, I sort of talk about like Oyster magazine and, pardon?
I said, I always say like they've sneezed over the...
Sneeze is probably nicer than vomit. I still vomit. But look at Oyster magazine and look at New Idea, it has to have a style and we don't want it over designed, and we don't need design in it, but it needs to be, and I'm going to show you some portfolios where there's a rhythm. And sometimes a folio needs a rhythm. We have a bit of white space, and we have a double page spread, and then we have a Brady bunch page, and then we go back to a double page spread. And so the rhythm, it's about that. So every time you turn the page, it's like, wow, what am I going to come to next? You don't want to get bored.
Make them want to keep turning the page. And
make them want to keep turning the page. And also just don't get hung up on because Jeff has got one folios looks fantastic that's going to be right for you. You've got to run your own show. And again, it's about being individual and how you want to do it.
Yeah.
And that is going to be appealing to your audience on why they're going to want to work with you, you know, because it's not ever just about your work. It's about how you pull things together, how you present yourself, how you talk about your work. In fact, I had a meeting with a designer this morning who wants to talk to a young designer, and he said, I just wanted to talk me through, and I know it's design, but it's the same. I want her to talk me through 3 pieces of her work. And she rang me up going, my God, what does that even mean? And it's like, he's interested in your design or your photography, this could be, but he wants to know your thought processes and how your brain works. And with a photographer, what is it going to be like on a shoot with you? Are you organised? Can you pull a team together? Can you get us all down the coast? Can you organise, you know, the catering? Can you make sure the models are there on time? And so there's that confidence that has to come with showing your portfolio and your website as well.
I think confidence is a really interesting word, and you've used it a few times, and this will be the segue into talking through the process in a more step-by-step manner. But the reason I wanted to host this webinar is because I interact with so many photographers who are confident about their photography, but not about their ability to edit or to select their images, to sequence them, to design them, and then to communicate to people once they have the printed or digital portfolio in there.
And what I want to say to them, Lib, is that they are not alone.
No, that's more common than not.
That is so more common. And do you know what? There are so many talented photographers out there that that don't understand the business of photography, right? Mm-hmm. And part of the business of photography is how to present yourself, whether it's in a portfolio, whether it's in a website, how to market yourself. The business of photography is not trying to make you an accountant. It is understanding how to present yourself and how to have that confidence. And equally, there is some, you know, there are some okay photographers out there that are very good at business, that are making good living, but they're not as good as the...
Sally, could you keep talking, because somebody's knocking at the door. So you just keep going. I'll be back.
You don't need to ask me to keep going.
You can keep going step by step.
And the business of photography is a hugely important part of running a photography business. And I think it's the one area where people, if they're going to feel unconfident or fail, is that fact that they haven't set things up. And you know, as a photographer, the more organised you are the day of the shoot, it should go really smoothly if you've got everything organised beforehand. And it's no different to a portfolio. And one of the things that I talk to people about all the time is that, as we mentioned before, overthinking things is the way of a lot of creative people. And it's not you, it's really normal. And not being able to sequence images because of the emotion behind them, and because there's so many great imagery, is one of the big issues that I see with a lot of photographers. And they want to show everybody everything, but you don't want to give it all away. You want to hold some stuff back. And especially these days, because you're wanting to show things on Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook, or you're wanting to send out an EDM. And so you've got to hold a few things back. And the other thing is, a portfolio is a portfolio for you for now, what is right in your life today, right? It might be quite different at the end of this year, and it might be quite different in a year's time. And that's okay, because it gives you an opportunity to update it, refresh it, go back to people, say, hey, I've updated my folio. I want to show it to you again. You know, so we're not just creating something for now that's going to be the same forever. And I think that hopefully that helps people kind of go, okay, because I meet with a lot of people that will ring me and say, oh, look, there's this one more shoot that I've got to do before I come and see you. And I say, do you know what? There is always going to be one more shoot. There is always going to be something. You've got to get started now. And then what it might do is it might actually change how you're going to be shooting for the near future, because you realise what it is that you're missing in your book. And you mightn't have realised that you have photographed everything the same for the last 3 years, and you need to for your own mental health and creative health, actually change it up a little bit. So that's important too. Who was at the door?
Sorry, it was delivery guy. So apologies about that, but I'm just going to jump to, there are a few questions that have come up, very good questions, and Sal, you decide whether or not you want to answer them right now, or you're just going to weave it into your next discussion topics. Abe has asked, how important is it to integrate words, quotes, and graphic design into your portfolio? And I just want to say up front that fabulous question, and I'm interested to hear your answer, Sal. I know from the perspective of photo books that I suggest, this is my personal preference, that text provides context. If you want people who have nothing to do or know nothing about the images that you've taken or the story you want to tell, and you want them to understand it quickly, then yes, as simple as a title or a date or a caption can help. It is totally subjective. That's in a photo book. So I'm fascinated to hear what you're going to say. But the typography and the way you present that text to me is just as important as the text you choose, because using the wrong font at the wrong size with little space around it can just take away from what is stunning imagery, and it lowers the tone of the whole book. And to me, it is probably the biggest downfall in most books that I see with text. Do you have anything to say, Sal, or do you want to weave that in later?
No, I'm happy to answer your question, Abe. So for me, a portfolio is absolutely not about design or text. I wouldn't include design or text at all in a portfolio. And the reason being is it's about your photography. I get where Libby's coming from in books. I think what's happening these days is that people are confusing portfolios, because we're doing online portfolios and websites. So we're talking about a portfolio, and a portfolio can be online or it can be printed. The whole concept of a portfolio is that you are with that portfolio talking about your work. Okay? So you don't need text. You need to have a story and say, well, this was a really great shoot. The rain was coming across and I could see it and I got the model there, and, you know, and we're remembering a shoot on that particular day. The minute that you're showing someone a portfolio and they're trying to read the text or understand what's going on and you're talking, it's like when a lecturer is talking to you and you've handed out notes and you're trying to talk and you're looking at notes, it doesn't work. The portfolio needs to just be about your photography. The website, though, people tend to look at the website without you being there. So your website is the sum of who you are. It is about what it is that you do. It's an about you. It's what the context of what these images are, which is what you were just talking about, Libby. It's sectionalized. It's on a website. It's I do food, architecture, and places. But in a portfolio, it is, again, it's about taking us on a journey. It's a lot more of a lateral approach. A website is literal. A portfolio is lateral. And I'm going to talk pre-COVID. So mostly what I have done over the last 25 years, and I continue to do, is a printed portfolio. There is nothing more beautiful than a printed portfolio where you can be sitting down and taking people on that journey. And that's when you don't need words or text or design. It just needs to be about the photography and the story. Because we've got an online portfolio now, if somebody wants to see our online portfolio and we're on Zoom, it tends to be like this. Otherwise, you send them your website.
Okay.
So I would keep words and text and design. Design is in the sense of putting, you know, shapes and lines on it. When I show you a portfolio, you'll see a design element in it, and it's got to be beautifully laid out. So the design needs to be beautiful layout. That's what a portfolio is about.
All right, can I ask a question?
Yep.
Do you think, you know, even as far as like a name and a date and you know, are they essentials, or at the same time, a portfolio, like we also have products where people can mail out a portfolio. Do you think that needs text? And I have a feeling that you'd say you would only ever mail that out after you've communicated with them anyway.
Yeah. Sorry, Lib.
No, go for it.
So with the digital world, Portfolios are slightly different to printed portfolios. It depends on how you're going to use them, and who wants to see them. The whole idea of the traditional portfolio is that you are with it and you're showing somebody. These days, when we're doing these conversations and I'm having a one-on-one with somebody who's showing me their portfolio, they're still talking me through it. I'm going to be talking you through portfolios shortly. That is the idea. If somebody wants to see your work, you would tend to send them your website, and then you'd have a phone conversation with them where they go, this is really great, Sally, I love your website. Take me through it a little bit more. Have you got a portfolio? Sure. So then the portfolio would come up. I'd be on the phone with them. I'd be on Zoom with them, or I'll be going into a meeting with them and showing them the portfolio.
Okay.
Now, always there's exceptions to rules. You may decide that if you're wanting to not have a website and you only want to go with a portfolio, you might have two versions of a portfolio. One that tells people a little bit more of a story, which in essence, it then becomes almost like a website. And then you might just have a whole series of beautiful images like I'm going to talk to you. And it gets back to, there is no right or wrong way to do it. Okay. Right? But at the end of the day, it's about your photography. It's not about stories. Having said that, I did a lot of work probably around 2000 and I'm going to say 13, 14, 15, when a lot of photojournalists lost their jobs, when all of the newspapers started going AWOL, and these were guys and girls that were coming out of working full-time in a full-time job and being told where to go and photograph every day. And they came out and they didn't know how to show their work and they didn't know how to get jobs. So I did a lot of work with those people back then. And with many of them, they were also really interesting people who had come from journalism and had picked up a camera and had become a photographer. And so with some of them, I did these beautiful storybooks where it was an image and a story, because the stories were so fascinating. And in Melbourne, there was people that had done a lot of work in Underbelly, and there was all these really great photos and great stories. There was a guy that had done the day in the life of an emergency room at one of the hospitals, and there was this incredibly emotional story that he was telling, and I said, write it. And so we created beautiful books for those guys that were telling the story as well. So it was right for them at that point.
And you called that a storybook then?
And we called it a storybook. Pardon?
That you called that a storybook on purpose as opposed to a straight portfolio.
Correct. And it was a storybook, but it was their portfolio because it was really all they had at that point in time, because they didn't have this huge body of work. Because as a photojournalist and working for newspapers, they weren't collecting and keeping all of their work. You know, so they then had to build up photos and images so that then down the track we put portfolios together for them. So again, I'm going to just reiterate to everybody listening that there are certain times in your life that things are right and then they are not right, and then you change it. There is no right or wrong, but generally what we're wanting to do in our portfolio is show photography. We're not wanting to get it carried away with words and typography. If you are going to show a book, let's say, and we're talking about commercial advertising photographers here too, Libby, if you're more of an art-based photographer, or there are a lot of commercial photographers that are also artists and they're exhibiting their work, if they're wanting to put a book together, which I do a lot of work with these guys and girls as well, I've got to say guys and girls and people, that, you know, recently worked with somebody who did beautiful poetry, and her poetry and her photography. So in that instance, Abe, we did use beautiful words across some of her imagery, but it was part of the story that she was telling. Again,
it's the purpose of her work and her story. It's
her work and her story. But in general, if you are wanting to show your photography, it's about your photography. And it's about what people see in your photography. It's like Sharon and I talked about before. It's about what people see. If you are going to show your work in the essence of wanting to get work, obviously, that's why you're showing your work. It's about how you present, and I've said it 1,000 times, how you present yourself and how you present your work. And overcomplicating things is the opposite of what people need. People need things to be really clear, sharp, communication, and we can't expect them to remember all 20 double-page spreads of your folio. What we want them to remember is when you've left the room, or when you've clicked off here, when you've shown your portfolio, wow, she had a really great sense of lighting, or he really handled people really well. He was great with groups of people, or her black and white was wonderful, or she did great setups, you know, like and they're going to take that away with them. And there'll be one or two images that they remember, but mostly it's going to be about the essence of who you are as a photographer that they're going to walk away with.
Yeah, okay. I like it. And
is Dave happy with that answer?
I'm happy. Does anybody have any comments they would like to make in the chat window? We have Scott. Scott made a comment, and I think this is part of it. You know, if you find something works for you, then yes, keep doing it. So he said he likes to put thumbnails on the back page of his portfolio with a short description and the name, and it often leads the viewer back to the larger image in the book. And I think that's a great example of you've tried something and it's proven that it's worked for you. So why not do it? Do you have anything specific to say, Sal?
Look, again, it's an individual approach, and what we do is we don't want to take people away from the photography. And so if it's a whole campaign at the back that they're showing, we don't want them to go, oh God, what about the TV campaign, and what about the radio, and I remember that, and go off on a tangent. Okay. We've always got to remember to bring it back into the work. But yeah, look, you'll find things that work, and this is an industry of communication. So it's about how you want to communicate yourself. I can't keep talking about that enough, and working with such a wide variety of people. And you know who you are in yourself, whether you are bold or whether you're shy or whether you are nervous or whether, you know, you are. I met a guy the other day who had gone from being this really hugely busy photographer and had to move into state, and is now not a busy photographer, who's actually lost their confidence. And it's about building that confidence back up again with the kind of work that person needs to be doing to fulfill themselves at this point. And especially now with what's been going on, photography is about, it's about wanting to bounce out of bed every day and take pictures, right? And tell people what you do. And if you are stuck in a rut, or if you are forced to be shooting things that is not where you want to be at the moment, it's like, how do you get out of that? And it may well be sort of moving into an art space, or it might be moving into exhibiting whilst you're trying to still reinvent yourself. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on.
Cool. So we're at 20 past 11 now. Shall we go into looking at some of the portfolios that you've got to show?
Sure. Is there any other questions?
We did have one other one, which was from Renee, and she asked how many images. So you've talked about the 20 double page spreads as a good size for a printed portfolio, but she wanted to know how many images do you suggest for a website?
Okay, well, it's a good question. So remembering what we're talking about, a portfolio is a lateral interpretation of who you are as a photographer. We are not trying to prove who we are as photographers in a portfolio. We're just putting gorgeous imagery in there to give people a sense of who you are. The website is a literal approach to who you are as a photographer. And depending on how many sections that you have, you don't want to have, you know, too many sections, but I suggest somewhere between 12 and 20 images per section. Okay, any more than 20, it's too much. Look, 15 is a really great amount. You know, 12 to 20, sometimes you just can't get it to 15, but you don't want more than 20, and you probably don't want less than 12. And if you have 4 sections, and let's say it's portraiture, animals, trees, and bottles, I'm just looking at things in front of me, isn't that weird? You don't want to have 20 portraits. Yeah, I've got my bottle, my animal, my tree. You don't want to have 20 animals, 4 bottles, you know, 15 trees, and 3, what were the other thing I said, you know? So they all need to be roughly the same, okay? So keep them all roughly between 12 and 20. So they're all, you don't want to make something more heavier than the other or more important.
Sure.
And I see that happen all the time. There'll be lots of people that have heaps and heaps of people in travel, and then they'll have 5 still lives. And it's like, well, okay. Do you want to do still life? Well, no, not really. I think it should up it. Well, okay, well, let's maybe get rid of it, or let's get more still life. And so we've got, you know, 12 of everything.
Okay, good advice. And while we're on that topic, Aldona asks, is it better to make your photography website more marketing style with calls to actions?
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that I find absolutely fascinating is that so many websites don't have mobile phone numbers. This is my face.
What?
Yeah. So many people don't have mobile phone numbers because
That
they don't
just
want
says
to
to me, I don't
bother.
want you to get in touch with me.
Correct. Or they'll have a phone number that goes through to somebody else. And it's interesting. I sort of went off on a tangent as I do before. Back in the day when I was an agent, I was the face behind the best photographers in Melbourne. That was my thing. I realised it didn't matter whether they liked me, they needed to like the photographers. So over time, I worked out that being an agent, you know, was not really where it was going into the 2000s. I think the 90s, it was all about being an agent. If I thought being an agent now was a good idea, I'd still be an agent. I think agents are probably more bookers these days, which are really important for busy photographers. But it's you that they want to know who you are. And it's about you and your personality. So it's important that they're meeting the photographer and the person these days. And I don't know why I got into that, but that was, I think that was what was Aldona's question?
Yeah, so Aldona was asking whether it should be more marketing style with calls to actions.
Yes. So with a website, yeah, absolutely it should be. And you know what? If you have a really busy life, and maybe even if you want to get a separate mobile phone, like I have an office mobile phone that we use just for the office, but everyone just rings my phone on my crazy bat phone that I've got here. It's attached to my phone. I know. Sally Phone Bill. That is
that's
my husband's name for me. Have a mobile phone number on there. It's really important. And it is a call to action. So it's got to be friendly. An about section's really friendly. I think it's, you know, first person's really nice. You know, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is my photography. I'd love to have a chat to you. Again, Aldona, it's a very personalized thing. If you're working in a team with people, there's a lot of photographers now that are partners, or there's a studio. So it's what's right for you at that point, but it needs to be friendly. It needs to be easily communicated, connected to your social media platforms, mobile phone numbers, email addresses. That if you are shooting, or if you can't answer the phone, have a really good voicemail. You know, hi, I'd love to have a chat to you. I'm in the middle of shooting, but I'll call you back. Or there was one I've rang the other day. She said, I never listen to my mobile phone, but I always read text. So please text me. Right, okay, so I hung up and I text her.
Yeah.
So I get that not many people want to be on their phone the whole time, but you need to have a phone number. You need to have a point of call, a point of contact, because often these days, if somebody is, or, you know, not these days, I mean, if somebody's wanting to use a photographer and they've been recommended, you know, Fred Nurks, they want to go on, Fred Nurks, great, I want to phone him. How do I phone him? How do I get, they're probably not going to want to send an email if it's quite a quick thing.
Yeah, speed.
You know, the email's great for SEOs, and I get all that, and it's really important that it's there, but have your phone number. So yes, it is a call to action. It's friendly. It's get in touch with me. This is how I can help you. This is the variety of things that I have. But again, it's clear communication. If you're not good at clear communication, it's about being good at business and pulling the right people in to help you, like I do. You know, I'd love to think that I'm perfect at everything, but hey, I'm not. Don't tell anybody. So I pull people in on an as-need basis to help me do things with the business. And that's what you guys have to do as a photographer.
Well, Sally, you answered that so well that Aldona would like to know if you have an end of financial year offer on portfolio reviews.
Yes, I do. I'm offering a 25% discount at the moment.
There you go. And we'll reiterate that at the end. I
Absolutely.
like the sound of that. Thank you, Sal. One last question for the moment before you move on and show us some images is Abe asks a fabulous question, if I can just find it here, which is how do you guys as photographers divorce yourselves from, or how do you divorce yourself from the emotional attachment to your images? I'd say my quick response is that it's really quite good to have somebody who's a third party, neutral party like Sal, to be involved. I say that to people who are making photo books, because you need that emotional, whether it's emotional or time distance, I think it makes a hell of a difference when you're selecting images. So over to the experts. Sal.
Yeah, look, it is, and it's not a new thing it's us photographers, it's all creatives. We wear our heart on our sleeves. That's the whole thing about being a creative. We are very attached to our work, and it is incredibly hard. I mean, I know even when I've done travels with the family and I come back and I'm putting a photo book together through Memento Pro, and I'm looking and going, oh, I've got to select the images, and I have to take a step back and go, okay, I can't have 15 pictures of that marketplace. That is the best one. And then that complements it. That's when we bought, all right, okay. And so it's about removing yourself. And it is very difficult, Abe. And that's why I do it, because I'm for other people, because I don't have that emotional connection. But what you've got to remember, and photojournalists, whilst Libby said putting books together, it can be interesting with photojournalists. What they do is there's a beginning, there's a middle and an end. And if you kind of remember that when you're looking at your portfolio, that can help you, I think, make a start. Because some people will say, how many images should I bring with me? And I said, look, I don't mind if you bring 200 or 300, because I will whip through them pretty quickly and I'll be able to see what's working and what's not. But they might have 4,000 that they have to whittle down to 300. And it's like, so what I would then say is, okay, we'll bring a selection of all the shoots that you've done and bring, 4 or 5 from each shoot, but bring your laptop with a hard drive. And I might say to you, okay, so this image is really fantastic. I don't like the eye, how she's just looking off center. Have you got any other shots? And then you can go to that on your laptop and then we can work through that. So you can't look at every single image that you've ever photographed. You have to make a call, but there's always going to be other images, and guess what? You can always take new images as well, which is really exciting and needed. Often when we're doing portfolios, I will design a portfolio and there'll be 6, 4, 3 holes where it'll be going back to uni, and it'll be going, right, I want you to actually go out and do a shoot that's going to match this, because there's nothing in here and you're really lacking such and such. And they go, yeah, I am really lacking that. And then they get really excited and they go off and we create a brief and they go off and shoot something. And that's equally as important as well, because it's always about, being inspired. And Libby talked about me before, that how much I love people and love what I do. I really do. I bounce out of bed every day, and
can you?
Sorry, I'm very, if you tied my hands, that'd be terrible. But I'm very blessed to do what I do, because I get to work with all sorts of people. Like the guy that I'm working with this afternoon is somebody who came to photography really late in life, whereas the girl that I worked with yesterday is hugely experienced and sort of blew my mind having a look at her work and helping her sort through that. And that is the same about putting your portfolio together. You have to, what's in your portfolio, your cracking portfolio, has to be every image in there you have to want to show people. And it's okay, because after a period of time, you'll say, I'm so over that image, and you know what? It's time to redo your portfolio. And one thing I want to say too on your portfolio is, don't try and change it each time you show somebody. Your portfolio is your portfolio until it's your next portfolio. The minute you start taking that image out and changing page 3 and putting 4 in, and it'll again start looking like, I said vomit, Libby said...
I said sneezed.
So your folio is your folio until you start going, oh, I'm so over that image, and then take it away, pull it all apart. You might put 80% of it back together. It might be in a different order, and 20% new. And on that note with percentages, I think it is really important that there is about 10% roughly of the same images in your portfolio as that are on your website. So there is some recognition. The other thing I see happen all the time is photographers will put all the same images on their website as they put into their portfolio. And often if somebody rings you, or if you see somebody, they've already looked at your website. So if you send them your portfolio or show them your portfolio, they go, oh yeah, yep, seen all of these. You need to be showing new stuff. If they recognize something, that's great. They'll go, oh, I've seen that before. And you think, yeah, you've seen it on my website. That's good. Okay. Yeah. And you can talk through that. And then younger photographers go, well, I just don't have enough work to have different images here. And it's like, well, keep shooting. You just got to keep shooting. And maybe you're not quite ready to put it together yet. Give it another month or so and go out and do some new shoots. So that's really important, really important.
Thank you, Sal. Well, I think at this point that we should progress, and you can show us some visuals.
Okay, here we go. And we're going to do this, and I'm going to get rid of that. So these are some tips that I have that I think I'm just going to go through now, Lib, before we go into the portfolios. It'll just reiterate what I talked about, and I'm doing this, I'm actually just going to show you, all right? So be individual in how you show your work. The folio should have what you want to be shooting in it, and really that's coming back to me saying to you all, don't try and second guess what people want to have in, that you should be showing people. It's what you want to be showing and what you want to be shooting, okay? Don't try and be something that you're not. You'll get in trouble. Don't put your work into sections. We talked about that. Example, food, people, interiors. You need to create an ebb and a flow. So you have food and people, people, interiors, people, food, and it keeps going all the way through. The minute you start sectionalising it, A, it's really boring, and B, we'll forget at the end what you did at the beginning. Don't put exactly what you have on your website into your folio. We've just had that conversation. Always include some of your personal work. I get that question a lot, Lib, where people say to me, oh, look, should I just be showing the jobs that I've done? And it's absolutely not. The portfolio is a personal, it's about who you are and what you love to shoot. And so putting your personal work in is going to be that point of difference between you and the next person, okay? It's really, really important. A lot of people get very confused with that.
Also some of the most fascinating stuff too. And if
Absolutely.
the portfolio is trying to give a sense of the personality and what makes somebody tick, I mean, it's the personal work that will show that more than a work they've had to work on a brief on.
Correct. Absolutely it is. And what it is also doing, it's showing the viewer how you can make their idea better with how you see things, or what your ability to location searching is, or that how to ride a jet ski, or whatever it might be. It's in there for the viewer to go, God, you're going to make my idea a whole lot better, and I've just got this new client, and my photographer hates water, and you've got lots of water, whatever it might be. Again, looking at water out my window.
Do you think the unexpected nature is nice too? Like when you've got to keep people engaged and make them want to turn the page, and when you surprise, everyone likes an element of surprise, so I suppose there's part of that in there too.
Oh, absolutely. It's keeping them engaged. And so when they turn the page, it's like, wow, okay, this is beautiful. And again, it's an individual thing. Sometimes it can be a beautiful thing because it's totally, whoa, this is really jarring. Where are we going with this? I've done some pretty controversial folios in my time that have had people talking a lot. I haven't got any of those to show you today because they're probably a little bit out there, and to do with the birth of, babies and butchers and various interesting things. But it was right for that particular photographer, Don't shoot, here we go, don't show, this is for you, Aldona, I think, show too much or too little work, around 20 double page spreads. Now, if you get 21 or 18 or 20, don't flip out, it's around 20 double page spreads. Forget tear sheets with words all over them. Tear sheets is really 1995. I think you want people to see your images, not comment on layouts, design, typography, who was the art director on that job, what was the client. So forget tear sheets. We're talking about a portfolio, just put your images in there.
And Sal, I wonder if part of why that's changed too is like the concentration span of most people these days has diminished. So keep it short and sharp and concise.
Short, sharp, clear communication. It's really what it's about. It's about just having this visual, response to your work. Isn't it wonderful when people go, oh God, this is just so beautiful. Oh, we want ours, we want ours, we want, and even if at the end of it they go, God, we don't have any clients at the moment that we could work with, but we would love to work with you one day. And that is that is equally as good as we've got a job for you, because that means you've got a connection. They love your work. You've got on really well. Your kids might play footy together on Saturdays. You both might have staffy dogs. Whatever the connection is, you keep that connection going. It means you can send an EM. You go, hey, I'm down. Can we have a cup of coffee? It's like every time I come to Sydney, I always ring up Libby and go, hey, Libby, it's normally not coffee, it's normally later in the day. But sometimes it's always a connection, and that's what we're doing. And a portfolio is about keeping that connection going with people and keeping them up to speed with who it is that you are and what you're doing. And things change, you know. Have a beginning, a middle and an end. The folio must have breathing space. So that's really important for most folios as well. And what that breathing space and how that looks is individual for everybody. And I'll show you some where there's some breathing space and some that don't have breathing space. With around 4 different things throughout the portfolio. I have that sort of a question for you as well as I think it was Abe about design and layout. It's so there needs to be an element of design to your portfolio, but we're not talking about starbursts and really clever, you know, lines going through your photography. It's about the layout of the page. And if you have around 4 or less, then we are repeating that throughout the portfolio, and it gives us, again, it gives us that rhythm and sense of we're turning the page and we kind of, whoa, there it is, oh, there, okay, we've, you know, it's that kind of thing. I started singing, and that was
word repetition, Sal, because, you know, you also don't want it to become too repetitive, but you do need consistency and regularity to kind of make it feel like it's flowing.
Correct. Delivery man?
No, that's my friend. She's closed the door. It's okay.
That's all right. I just got a whole lot of water up my nose. I don't even know. I couldn't repeat that even if I tried. So
are you right there?
I'm completely fine. And so this is an idea. So, and I'm going to go through these Brady Bunch page, 2 full bleed pages next to each other, 4 windows with 2 on each page, or stick to the same throughout, like an all double page spreads, for instance. So again, I'll show you some of those ideas. Don't include work to prove you are a photographer. I think that's really important in a cracking portfolio. Including a complex still life of a bottle when you're a portrait photographer doesn't work. It's confusing and not necessary. But I see it all the time. I see photographers that have this beautiful body of portraiture, and then there'll be, you know, 1 or 2 still lives in there, and I'll go, and I'll won't say, oh, I'll get to the end, and they'll go, oh, well, look, I just kind of feel like as a photographer, I should offer that service. Well, probably not, because you're a portrait photographer. If you are wanting to offer that service, have, you know, the kid with a pair of glasses or goggles on, you know, and that then is a still life. You are putting your shingle up as a photographer, right? You go to see somebody, you show your website, we believe you're a photographer. Why? Well, you've got no reason. You know, it's like when you go to see a doctor. Well, I'm hoping you are a doctor because I'm here. I'm hoping you're a photographer because you're telling me you're a photographer. Don't prove to me you're a photographer. Just show me what it is that you do, and show me in a really beautiful way that is what you want to be showing. Really important. So now I'm going to, I've got full folios to show you, but I've just selected a couple of screen grabs from a really wide variety of people that I've worked with over the years to show you some interesting layouts and about talking about imagery that perhaps connects with each other or competes with each other, which can be equally important in a portfolio. So here's an example of, this was a portrait of a young girl, and she had a pink necklace on, and we did a whole series of portraiture, and rather than having page after page after page of children and people's faces, I thought, wouldn't it be great to put some, and this particular photographer came from the country, and he was very, he talked a lot about the country, and he wore, you know, he was a country kid, country man, you know, and so I said to him, right, I want you to go out and photograph a whole lot of stuff that's part of the landscape. And so we did a whole portfolio of portraiture and landscape. And we picked this and turned the girl's pink necklace exactly the same shade. And it's just a beautiful double page spread. It's not competing with each other. It's really not about the flowers on the left at all. It's just about this gorgeous portrait of this young girl. Yeah. This is a double page spread. So this is in a A2 folio, and it goes right across 2 full double bleed, double page spreads, full bleed. And it is fantastic because people, this is what they do when they look at it, they go, oh, wow, you know, let's have a look. And that's what you want somebody to doing with your portfolio. And if you look at it there, you know, we've got, I don't know if you see my skirt cursor, we've got this guy who's dressed differently to everybody else. And we've got this guy who's turning around, and, you know, we've got, you know, this guy who, you know, is just, his mum's so proud of him. And we've got all this crazy stuff happening in here. And imagine that and a beautiful big folio, and it was something that was totally unexpected in the folio as well. And those sorts of pages are equally as important.
That's a high impact page right there.
Oh, total. And every time I look at it, I see something completely different, you know, and like I've never seen this guy here before scratching himself, you know. And it was taken at the shrine, and it was part of a story that this guy did on Anzac Day. And it was a throwaway shot. And he literally just whizzed past it. And I said, no, hang on a minute. This is a corker. We're going to use this shot. And he goes, really? He said, but they're not all looking at the camera then, you know. And I said, no, this is the one. And it's great. It's like Where's Wally, isn't it?
It is very Where's Wally. And you know what, you mentioned that it was an A2 size. And I always say to people that the way you format and the size you choose and the paper you choose should, be based on the purpose of your book and the audience that you're showing it to. I mean, the impact of that on an A2 size page is immense. Like it kind of gives the sense of the enormity of the scene by the size that you see it in the book too.
Absolutely, Lib. And that's a really good point about a cracking portfolio. I keep using the title.
Thank you, I noticed.
Yeah, is that, as I've said to you all the way through today, is everybody is totally individual. So it doesn't mean all portfolios have to be A2. Some portfolios can be smaller, some can be paper, some can be vertical, some can be horizontal. And a lot of people come to me and say, I've already got a portfolio that I used to use and it's horizontal, and I look and all of the work is shot vertically. And I'll go, it's not going to work. And oh God, I didn't realise I photographed everything vertically. So have a look. One of the ways, you know, what should I do? Should I do a horizontal or a vertical or portrait portfolio? Is have a look at how you shoot. If you shoot a really sort of half mixture of half and half, well then that's a little bit trickier. But you will find as a photographer, you are more likely to shoot one way or the other. And that's just years of experience of me looking at people's work. And I pointed out to them, oh my God, I didn't realise that. And that's how I decide whether it's going to be a landscape or a portrait shape. Okay.
Do you ever do square, Sal?
Yeah, I have done a lot of square in the past. And I tend to do square folios with photographers' personal work so some photographers will have a commercial advertising portfolio of their portfolio of work, and then they will have a series that they've done. And we might have done it through Memento Pro, or I might have done it some other way, where they've showed a series of images that they've done on street photography. And we might have one or two in their portfolio, but sometimes it's really lovely to have another book, or it might be a cookbook, or it might be something in addition to showing their current portfolio. And that's actually a really important point, because so many photographers get wound up because they can't show everything in a portfolio because I won't let them. So sometimes if they've done this huge shoot in Central Australia and we've only picked 2 or 3 images to put in their portfolio, yet they have so many more, I will suggest that they get an iPad and that they put all of these images on an iPad, and it can sit in the back of a book or a portfolio. So if somebody then goes, oh, the Shrine of Remembrance, this is a fantastic job. We've got a client that's the military, and have you got any more? You can pull out your iPad from the back of your portfolio or in a bag that you've got, and you can click on, you know, Anzac Day, and you can then show them through your portfolio, through your iPad, a whole lot of other images. Okay, so that is something that is happening these days that wasn't happening in the 90s, and it's so much better to do it like that than to go, oh, hang on a minute, if you've got the internet, I need to get my website up, oh, I'm sorry, it takes ages to load.
You don't want to lose their attention
and they'll go, no, don't worry about it, just send it to me later, and you go, oh, I want to do it now, you know. So everything is instant. You know, the problem with 2020 is everything is instantaneous, and it's all about now. And that's why you have your mobile phone and your website. That's why you're prepared. You're like a Boy Scout, Girl Guide, you know. Yes, I've got more of that. It's like today, Libby said, have you got something to show? Yes, I do, you know. So be prepared, and you never know. And you might only show 15 showings. One's really important, you know, and you'll learn how to, I've just noticed that trombone, I've never seen that before.
Oh, I noticed that straight away.
And And the other thing is, it gets back to, you never know what people are going to want to see or how it's going to go. You know, you meet some people and they've just got nothing. They're just giving you nothing. And you need to entertain them. I go into entertainment mode. Or you go, oh, I really love your top. You know, guys aren't going to do that. Or, oh, how about those, you know, demons, you know, talk about footy if you're in Melbourne. So you've got to find that connection before they can even get into your photography sometimes. And that is part of that whole negotiating and communicating thing.
Totally.
So here's another gorgeous image. So this is where I've manipulated it slightly. So the girl's eye, I have put it with this, I just felt like it just had this is shot in Tasmania on the left. Completely different shoots, completely different years, but that beautiful water at the bottom, we made it exactly the same colour as her eye, and it was just enough. And you know, John Gollings, who many of you will know, was my mentor when I was at university. And when I went to see him with my folio, first of all, he told me to throw it in the bin, which obviously I was devastated about.
You've learned a lot since then.
I learned a lot, but he said to me, the only reason any of your images are half good, not even good, is because of how you see colour. So back then he said to me, I want you to go away and I only want you to shoot black and white so that your composition will become really strong. And when I tell you, you can shoot colour again, you see what happens. Mm-hmm. So I went away and I shot black and white film for a long period of time. And then I introduced colour. And so it made my composition really strong, but I still see in colour these, you know, colour is hugely important for me. And with a cracking portfolio, a colour palette is hugely important about taking us through a journey of colour as well. That's how I definitely see a folio. It's not just about what the content of the images is, it's about the colour palette and how we lead from one colour. And that's how you can go from a portrait into an architectural piece into food because of colour. So we could go from a bowl of oranges into an orange building into a girl with an orange hat. So
the colour spectrum is the thread that takes you through the book. I love that.
And then if she's got an orange hat on with a blue dress, we can then go into a building with blue food, which would be a blueberry, because I can't think of any other blue food. But this is a really good, blue cookie. This is a really good example of just manipulating it slightly. I mean, she had beautiful eyes, but now they're the exact colour. This is another really interesting layout for a portfolio as well, is having the same shoot and using the same shoot twice. So a close-up and a distance, or a 3/4 and a close-up, rather than having him next to each other, both against a wall. Well, whilst that could look good in some circumstances, this I think is quite a compelling way to put some pages together in a portfolio. And you can repeat this maybe 5 pages down. You could have the close-up on the right-hand side and the full bleed on the left-hand side. And that's quite a compelling way to do it. And also quite ballsy to put a shot in with a guy with his eyes closed as well.
And you're kind of getting a bit of portraiture and then a bit of like environmental architecture style on the other page, and it's...
Yeah, and you're also getting a sense of that quite a ballsy, that this photographer is quite ballsy and also has made somebody feel equally confident and awkward at the same time. Look how awkward he is there, but how she's made him laugh and smile. And so I'm going to, if I use this photographer, I'm going to get, you know, a lot of different looks from, and it says so much just from one spread. This is a little bit like the army spread. This was just, this is an aerial shot of cars, and this guy worked for, I'm going to say, realestate.com, not real estate, that would be weird. And again, it was a throwaway shot that he had, and he goes, oh my God, I've got thousands of these. And again, A2, big, it's huge, and it's just like Matchbox cars. And it's just fun, you know, and it's okay to have fun. What about that?
Very rare that you read a book that makes you laugh, or look at a book that makes you laugh, or, you know, makes you fun like that. Why not?
Or just smile and just go, oh God, I drive past that, you know, this is near the Tullamarine in Melbourne. I drive past that all the time and I see it from road height, but oh God, it does look really cool from, you know, and it's a cool story as well. Like I was hanging out the aeroplane and I shot this and, you know, whatever, you know, oh, okay. So all of a sudden we know that you hang out of airplanes, that you do this, that you see you're giving a lot of information away, even with this one shot. It wasn't a drone, it was hung out of an airplane.
Much
Now,
cooler.
this is an interesting image as well. So this is really a nothing image, but equally important in a portfolio is a breathing space. I talked about breathing spaces, and I'm the shot. It was actually in the wrong order. So this was the shot that went before it in the portfolio. Now, I picked the flowers to go with this bird because of the shape of the bird's mouth and the colour of the pink. The leaves. There was no other reason than why they looked beautiful together. And it was with a really well-known photographer and animal and bird photographer, Angela, and she does beautiful work. And I've done a lot of her portfolios, and I just love this page. But then after that, we wanted to change the colour palette, and I thought, oh, what will we do? So we just went straight into that, and it was just a beautiful double-page spread that cleared it for us to go into a whole other story in oranges.
I call that cell, I use the term visual punctuation, and it makes me think of like in a film, because I think of a book often as a movie on paper. And you know, when sometimes in a film, like you've been bombarded with imagery and colour and a really, you know, lots happening on the screen, and then you just get like a clear screen and a bit of quietness, and it's just enough to reset and to refocus to see what's happening next and to reflect on what's just happened. That's exactly what I think of with these pages.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's beautiful. This is an interesting one. This is a follow I did a long time ago, but I included it because it's so chaotic, and it's actually it was part of a fashion photographer's portfolio, and I call it like a Brady Bunch image. And so it's the same girl in front of, you know, the same backdrop repeated and repeated and repeated. But again, it just had this wow factor at the time in the middle of a portfolio. Each image on its own, they were for online fashion, and each image on its own, you know, they weren't fabulous, but as a story, it made it really cool. And it gave us a really good sense that he was able, this particular photographer, to work with was happy to do online fashion, same girl, same pose, same backdrop, and just get a whole lot of different poses. So it tells me a big story about this particular person in one fell swoop. Yeah. And this is another page as well. Again, I call it a Brady Bunch page, and I do it a lot, especially with food photographers, because food photography is quite prolific, and it's never just about the bowl of food. So you've got the bowl of food, and you've got the drinks, and you've got the ingredients, and you've got the salt and the pouring peas, and you've got gorgeous platters and knives and drinks and whatever. So what you don't want in a food folio, I'm going to show you a food folio shortly, is what you don't want is to just be looking at plate of food, plate of food, plate of food, plate. It just gets a bit boring. You know, so to have a breakup page like this where we can do plates of food and we can do a variety of different things, and then have one page where we just get a whole lot of images across in one double page spread, rather than wasting our other 20 pages full of all of these images. All of them are really lovely images, but none of them are really full bleed images. Yeah, so I call that a Brady Bunch page, and that is a portrait shaped folio. Does that make sense? Yep.
Yes. I'm going to use the term Brady Bunch page.
Yep.
It's much more interesting than grid.
Brady Bunch page. I know. Yeah, grid's boring. This is again. So this is a landscape portfolio. So this is a split down the centre here, if you can imagine, guys. Yeah. And we've got windows, and windows work really well as well. So this was for a photographer that did a variety of still life work, and this was a series that she did on jewellery and milk. Interestingly, it was a white on white, and all photographers know what a pain in the backside white on white is. And I didn't want page after page after page of this, but we just did it in one double page spread, and we got the message across, and it was clean. And in fact, how it's shown here, it's just because of the screen grab. It was all on a white background. It wasn't.
I was going to ask you, did you put it on black? Because I wouldn't have expected that.
No, it's not meant to be on black. And Felix, who did this for me, will be in enormous amounts of trouble tomorrow. No, not really. It was all on white. Yeah, so I'll change that for the next time I use this. Felix. Yeah, Felix. No, I have to take full responsibility of that, because I looked at it this morning and just went, oh God. But anyway, you get the idea.
But it gives us the opportunity to comment on the black and white, because we see a lot of people using black backgrounds, and I know that black has a distinguished nature, but it doesn't always work.
No, it doesn't. And this was most definitely meant to be white, not black. But yes, I put it in there for us to talk about this, Libby.
There we go.
Thank you. This is a little bit like the shot of the guy standing against the wall. This was this series that he did on children and boxing, and I just couldn't think of anything. I couldn't see any other. It wasn't going to compete with that desperately sad face, and it was like, oh, shall I use a bit of his sweaty body? Shall I use a silhouette? And I thought, oh, I know. Can you get these shorts again? So I got the photographer to go away and just photograph those shorts. It's not about the shorts, it's about the kid, but it's a really, impactful. It was a portrait-shaped portfolio, and it just had such great impact to have that next to it.
Yeah, beautiful texture too.
Yeah, texture, light, shimmer. It was gorgeous, and and we sort of look at it, but we look at it and then we go straight to him, because really it's all about him.
Yeah. And actually, on that note, is that why you placed him on the right-hand side of the page?
Correct. So that we looked at that and then we went into him. Yeah. And then this is again a bit like the jewelry. So these are full page. These are also should be on white. So again, apologies. But these are 4 windows out of a vertical side, a vertical shaped portrait, and they're windows. And windows are a really great way, like the jewelry, to show a body of work, like the Brady Bunch page, and you can get one story across in a double page spread. And this was, she travelled to America, she worked in this, photographed this coffee grinder place. We've got the coffee grinder, we've got the guy. It tells a really beautiful story without having to go page after page. Oh yeah, it's the coffee grinders. Oh yeah, it's the coffee grinders.
Like a photo essay on one double page spread.
Just gives it a really good, short, sharp communication. It's a great story. Hey, we've got a coffee grinder client. Do you have any more? Yep, I can get out my iPad. How many do you want? I've got, here we go. Here's the rest of the coffee grinder shops, if that's what you want. Or, off you go. And again, a page like this, again, that's a vertical, it's a portrait book. It really isn't anything other than the fact that I've worked with a great stylist. We've picked the best raspberries. It's bold, it's colourful, it's changing the pace in the portfolio, and really good to show a shot like this just before lunchtime because it makes everybody hungry. And that's me. So that's some samples of portfolios. Now what I want to show you, if I've still got some time, is some actual portfolios.
Yeah, just to let you know, we're at 12 o'clock, so it seems to be perfectly timed.
Okay. So I'll just get this to upload. So this is a photographer from South Australia who I've recently worked with, a gorgeous woman. And she has, like all photographers, she had a lot of work and a lot of really beautiful work, but really wanted me to come in and just make sense of her work. And I think that's a lot of what I do with people, is help them make sense of, where their strengths and weaknesses are, what's working, what's not working, and how to tell a story of the variety of things that the individual photographer can do without making you look like a jack of all trades. It is okay to photograph things in different ways and to have different techniques, but how do we show that without confusing people? If people are confused, whether you're a photographer, a designer, an art director, whatever sort of book or folio I'm putting together or website, if you are confused about what your message is, you can't expect other people not to be. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So your message needs to be really clear. At this point in my life, this is what I'm doing, and I'm open to suggestions to work with you on anything that it is that you want. But you can see the variety of ways with which I could help you through my body of work that I'm showing you now. So this is page 1. So this is an entire portfolio of one photographer. And this is a vertical portfolio. And so we have, if you can imagine, it's a closed portfolio that we've opened up. And so this is page 1 on the right-hand side. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I should be like this, page 1, everything's on this. And then we turn
like
the page, and then we go into a double page spread. Similar colour palette, you know. It's, you know, it's a portrait of a guy and it's a ballerina, but it's a similar colour palette that we're working through.
Yeah.
And then
But
we're going
into very different styles to portraiture.
And so then we're going into this, and this beautiful girl, so it's a real shot. And this photographer, Alice, had also done a whole series of floral photography. So she worked with still life as well. So I picked this particular image because of her lipstick, the beginning and the end of the story.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And then I've repeated it and I've reversed it. So we talk about the reverse and the repeat. So we've got this gorgeous guy, and again, the colour tone, the tonality of his clothes, his eyes, and those flowers work. They go beautifully after this, and then they go work with him really beautifully as well.
Mm.
Then we're going into it. So we've picked up some of these colours and the pale pinks, and I've just gone into a breathing page because she also does a lot of beautiful landscape. So remember, it's a double page spread. And then from that, we're moving across into, and in here we've got some golds and yellows and oranges that are starting to come through. And the golds and yellows and oranges, we're moving into a yellow story. And so this is this beautiful girl with her, you know, yellow makeup, yellow flowers.
Beautiful photography.
Yeah, and then we're going into something that's quite light and bright. And again, this particular shoot, I know that there was a huge series. So it was about picking two images, and she, as the photographer, was like, oh, I really love this and I love that. These were the two that spoke to me and that were unique and different, but told a story about the same shoot, but was able to offer us different stories. And we're still in the same colour palette here. And again, we've used the close-up and the far away, like the full length and then the 3/4. It's slightly different to what we did before. Have you got a little person that's just come into the room, Lib?
Yes.
Pardon?
Apologies for that. He just wanted to see what was happening.
Why wouldn't he? So we've moved into this sort of lighter, brighter colour palette now. We've sort of had this, we've used this as a juncture, and then we're moving into a brighter, lighter, whiter colour palette with flowers.
Beautiful.
And we've still got a bit of the gold here and sort of the earthy, natural, environmental portraits. And then we're taking the yellow and we're continuing the yellow down, and the yellow and the green. And we've got the girl with just the slight bit of green going on here. Again, this was a portrait taken in Australia. This was something taken from one of her travels overseas, but it enables her to talk about her travels as well. Oh, was that shaken in, you know, Colombia? Yes, I went to Colombia. Let's talk about Colombia, blah, blah, blah. You know, so again, it's a conversation piece. You know, Cracking Portfolio has conversational issues in it as well. So we've introduced smiles. So we've gone from all of this, you know, beautiful, wafty, lovely photography. We've introduced a smile. And then this photographer has also done this. Her name's Alice. Alice has done this beautiful series on smiling and laughter. And rather than having page after page after page of it, there's a Brady Bunch page of laughter.
Certainly is.
Isn't that glorious?
Yeah.
And everybody has a story and everybody's different. And she had so many pictures, and I handpicked these particular ones because they were all different. They were all unique. We've got this little Mickey Mouse here, and we've got this gorgeous little one here, and eyes closed, and older people and younger people and everybody in between. It's just beautiful.
And Sal, on that note, when you select or when you work with somebody on their portfolio,
yep,
how much of it is like, do they say to you, here's the stack I want you to sort through, or do you say to them, give me access to everything, and then do you work together, or do you direct it, or how does it work, or is it a combination, a collaboration?
No. Well, what will happen is they will talk to me on the phone first, and I will get them to select probably 200 or 300 of their own images. And they can either, if we're doing it on Zoom, they upload it onto Officeworks, and I just pick it up from my local Officeworks here in Richmond. Or if they come to me directly, they'll bring just packets of Officeworks photos, and I lay them out on the floor, and then I get them to sit over there on their doing their emails or whatever they need to do. I put my music on really loudly and I just start working, and I'll ask questions about them, and I'll go, what about this shot? So with the laughing shot, there might have been one or two of them, and I'll say, these are gorgeous. And she'll go, I've got hundreds of them, and I could get them up on the screen. Let me have a look at them. And then I started to select them. So that's how it works. So it's very much me direct
time together.
We spend roughly, depending on the amount of work, it's a roughly 3 to 4 hours.
Okay. And what do you call that? Because I know you have different services. What
Bloody.
What was it?
Fantastic. No. What do I call it? I call it, so there is, it's a portfolio. It's a portfolio session. I have a 2-hour consultation, which are slightly different, where people are bringing their work and we talk about their strengths and weaknesses and talk about how they can improve on their portfolio and their website. We talk about quoting, we talk about marketing, we talk about running a business. So those 2-hour sessions are quite different. I'm actually physically not making changes. I am giving advice on where they're currently at in their career and how they can get to where they want to be. The portfolio session's about 3 or 4 hours, where I'm actually physically working with printed 6x4 inch images that I'm laying, and I'm actually laying out and I'm creating a design for them. I also do that with websites. I can do a website revamp where we work with what you've got. And if the layout works really well on the website, it's just the images are out of sequence. There's too many, there's not enough. I will do a website revamp, or I can do an entire new website where we actually start from scratch, where they can either work themselves. A lot of photographers are really good at working on templated websites, or I have a team of people that I can select to work with individual photographers and either design a site from scratch or work off a template and actually put it together for them. And if need be, I can have writers come in and help write bios, and I've got it all. But they're the different sorts of consultations that I have.
All right, and just coming back to the portfolio, when so you're basically, they've given you their 200, 300 images, and then you're selecting as you go. Do you need to have agreement at the end that you like the combo, or is it?
Absolutely. So I'll lay it all out, and then they'll have a look at it. And then some photographers will go, I'm loving it all. I don't feel really great about these two. And I'll go, right, let's take them out. And that shot, I never really loved that. Okay, well, I'll take that out. Some will go, my God, this is mind blowing. And I would never have done this, and I love it. And others, there'll be to and fro. And I go, okay, so what is it about these that you don't like? And we'll go back, because everything's still on the floor, and we'll go back to the floor, and they'll go, well, I love this one and I love this one. Food photographers will often do that. They tend to do that. And then I go, yeah, actually, that's right. You're right. That does work. So then it becomes at the end a much more of a collaboration, because it's really important. I'm not going to have a picture in there, not one single picture that they don't like or that they don't feel comfortable with. Or they might, often a photographer will go, oh, actually, given the size it's going to be, I think it's not going to work, because I actually shot that on, I don't think it's going to work. And I'll go, well, we don't want it in there, so let's get it out. And then if there's nothing left on the floor that we can fill areas that they haven't liked, we will talk about something that they're going to shoot. And then I'll write a brief for them on how to shoot and what they're going to shoot for that.
Like you did with the guy with the shorts.
Like I did with the guy with the shorts. Yeah.
Cool.
Exactly.
Thank you.
That's easy. Done too. And in fact, Alice, this particular folio is, there's one thing that she had to change after we did this, and she went back and changed it. And then she wanted to reshoot something. It was a similar story, and then she just emails them to me and with the original, and then she'll go, what about this one or this one? And we'll go, oh yeah, no, this one will work, and then we'll change it. So once we're connected, the connection doesn't end when they leave the room or we turn off Zoom. You're connected to me for life, baby. Is that right, Sharon? If she's still listening. So then this changes the pace. We've got all this laughter and everything, and then we're going into these beautiful portraits that she's done of these women. And then we go back into, and we're in a blue story now, of course. So we're going into a denim and a blue story, and we're continuing on the blue, kind of warm, wafty yellow. We're introducing beach. Oh, we've got surf rescue beach people, fantastic. And then we've got yellow and red and blue bold colours. So then we're going back to this story again of laughter, because she had it all in colour as well. So I've put all of the elements that are in here, the yellow, the red, the blue, and we've added them here. And again, it's a different story. It's totally different vibe to, the others were laughter, these were screams, you know. And my idea for this, for her, was when she did a website, was to perhaps when people hovered over it, you heard them screaming, you know, like actually make it interactive, which I think would be really fun.
Nice. But Sal, are you saying, so with these, you suggested she put the different colours in the backgrounds, or were they part of the original images?
They were part of her original images, but she had hundreds of them. But I just picked, that was every colour of the rainbow, but I picked the blue, the orange, the yellow and the red because it went with this.
Yeah, no, I love it.
And then I picked this because it went with the yellow and the flowers and the red. And that's a real contrast as well, but it's still, you know, it's in a similar area. It's telling.
It's a contrast in one way, but the diagonals are consistent.
Absolutely. And we've got the cross here and the cross here, and it just works beautifully. And then we've introduced the flower, and then this girl's got the flower. This was shot in New York. And again, you know, it's important that those images were on the correct sides. So if the girl on the left was on that side, she'd be walking out of the picture. So again, images sit on either the left or the right page, and you need to be careful about which side. Some images can sit on both, but when you're putting images together, make sure that they're not competing and that we're falling out of a page.
Yeah, very important.
And then we've still got colour and flowers and black going, and this is an actress, I forget her name. And again, this is also a really nice way to show a portrait of somebody in the same light. So we've got her forward, you know, exactly what it is. And again, the image on the left had to go on the left, otherwise she was always going to be falling out of the page. And it's in a body of work. It's if we had every page where it was the same person in a different angle, it'd be really boring. But because we've just done it this time, it works really well. Then here we've got, you know, two completely different stories, completely different images, but they work really beautifully together. One's really soft and one's really hard, and one's a guy, one's a girl, one's got the flower, but they just tell us a story about who this photographer is. And we've introduced, we've sort of changed the colour palette, because by using black and white, we can change the colour palette again. And this is a double page spread. Don't be frightened to cut the page where the person is in half. I think it just goes right down here. So his shoulder's the only thing on that side. Don't be afraid to do that. You know, it works beautifully. And then we've changed the palette. We've gone warm. And then we end up on her, which just goes va-voom.
Bang, back to lips.
Back to lips. So that's Alice's folio. This is a photographer, Nicola. He's an Italian photographer that's living in Australia now. So I'm just going to start at the beginning and the end to start with. So this is the first page. So what I've done is, it's called a bookend. So I've started with this man because there was so many great pictures of him. And when we go right down to the end, we've ended with him as well, which you'll see in the beginning. But I just want to remind you of that as we go through it. So again, we've started off with him as a portrait. Then we've gone into the same guy, a similar portrait, but same but different. Tells the same story, but it's a different look for him. And same with the girl. This is like, this was a shot that he just went, oh, it was a throwaway shot. She was going, no, you know, and I said, that's such a fantastic ballsy shot. You know, I love that shot. And this shot here, you know, it wouldn't have worked on that side. And yes, it's the same girl, but we've got two totally different vibes from her as well. And then a double page spread, which is, you know, split down here a bit like the other guy. So again, don't be afraid to tell these stories.
And so a lot of these are like full bleed. Do you have a preference for full bleed or white space, or is it totally up to the photography and the purpose and the format?
Totally up to the purpose. So this is a full bleed folio. This is why I'm showing this one to you. This was, again, this photographer does a lot of, Nico does a lot of series of images and does a lot of or he's a portrait photographer, obviously, but we get a great sense that no matter who's in front of his camera, he can come up with all these amazing ideas and photograph similar scenes, but make them look completely different. And it's all, this guy is bold, he's Italian, he's gorgeous, he's funny. It's about, this is beautiful, you know, showing the back and the front. It's a bit like the bookend that we did before, making sure that we've got the shoulders, you know, at the same height.
Yep. Not
This
yet.
is it's a pardon?
I said they're not your average portrait.
No, and he tells us a beautiful story when he's telling this portfolio as well. And then we've got a Brady Bunch page of dancers to break it up. And then we use the black and white to break it up, and then we move into some more colourful work. So we've got reds and blues, and then reds and oranges, and then we've got oranges and pinks. You know, pink and purple. Who doesn't love pink and purple together? They're well known. He's a well-known comedian. So it's showing me that he works with well-known people and also unknown people as well. And we've introduced the pink and the blue. Again, it's a colour palette thing. You know, we've gone from looking at the colour. We're introducing the pink and the blue and the purples through here. And then we drop it back down again. We've still got a little bit of the pinky red here. And we get back down into the moodiness where we started, and back into the hands that remind us of what we were doing before with all the hands. And this guy is Italian and he talks with his hands. So the hands were really important. And I thought this was just beautiful, you know, this portrait of this man and just putting the fish with him. You know, it's just such a...
Just what I would have thought of.
Just such a beautiful portrait. And we end with the same man that we started with, which reminds us of the beginning of the portfolio. So the bookends can work really beautifully as well.
Completes the circle.
I don't know if you've got, that would be my door. I'm not sure if you've got time to see another one.
Well, how about, I think what I'll do here is, because we're at 12:20.
Yes.
And I have to be careful of my timing. Do you mind if we just open it up for questions to see how many questions you've inspired?
Sure.
And just as guys, please feel free to pop any unanswered questions into the chat manager. And Penny acknowledged exactly what I think, that was a super fresh folio and super inspiring. That last one in particular, I loved it. But to me, can I just say, just on a personal note, that to me, that's as good as watching a movie. I love looking at images and you know, the contrast and the comparisons, and what you put together can change the meaning. Like there's a great quote by a photo book creator, Ralph Gibson, who was a documentary journalist, I think in New York, and he said, you know, that the sum of the part, what is it, you know, the combination of the parts has to be more than the whole. I get that wrong every time.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's about how you bring things together and you get a bigger picture. The
Correct.
story is enhanced by what you show together and in sequence. And you've shown that through these portfolios.
And whilst they're both, and the reason I picked those two to start with, because they're both portrait photographers, you know, if you are showing that portfolio, both of those portfolios have they're both shoot people. Okay, they both shoot people, but they both have such a different vibe about them.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and one is male and one is a female, and that comes into it as well. Women shoot very differently to men, and, you know, I think if ever I did my PhD, it'd be about that, how women see and how men see, because
interesting, Sal.
We have a game, because I do a lot of judging of competitions all over the place. I have one group of people that I judge with. I'm always going, this was shot by a guy, this was shot by a girl, and everyone's going, come on, you know, and I'm normally always right, I have to say, because we do see differently. I think that would be a great PhD. This is a food folio, which I'll just start talking, you know, showing as we go.
Because we don't seem to have a lot of questions, because you've answered so many questions, but Penny would like to hear you talk on male/female eyes.
I bet she would. Men and women see really differently. They do. And I Pen, I'm going to be really vague about this, and I'm going to say that I can't quantify what it is and how they see. It's just that women tend to be probably a lot more, see into an image a lot more than men do, I think. I think men seem to see things larger and women seem to see things a bit more close up in general. It's not to say that they can't do both either. Yeah. And it's just the way that they approach their photography. I particularly love, this is a female photographer. I love that
another webinar, Sal.
Yeah, it should be. And I would then be able to, it's not something, some things, and I guess with me, I feel like I'm a bit like Rain Man sometimes. I never forget an image. Yeah, okay. Often will forget a name, but I never forget an image. And somebody will ring me 6 years down the track and I'll go, oh yeah, you were the one that photographed the pink ice blocks on the grey. And how do you remember that? I don't know, I just do. So I have this incredible resilience for remembering imagery and how I put it together. As I said, there's no cookie cutter or reasoning behind why I put some things together, or why out of this particular shoot, of which there was probably 20 images, why those 4 worked. They just did. And sometimes, and it's about, and I say it to not just photographers, but to designers and other creatives, it's about not overthinking things. If it works, hey, don't, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, sort of thing. It works. Don't question it. Don't overthink it. It works. And this is a good example of this as well. This was some kind of crazy, I don't know what, and this was some beautiful flowers that I went to get at a photograph, and it's just a beautiful page. Yeah. It works so beautifully after that page. Mm-hmm. And we go through the green story, we go through the bunch page. We don't want page after page again of ingredients, and we move into more moody work. Gorgeous. And red, and then we come up again and we have a four page, and we had the 4 page before, if you remember. Yes. It's down here. So we've repeated the 4 page again, and we've got breathing space with the 4 page. Where am I finding it? There it is. We've got more double page spreads. Then we've got the 4 page repeat again, and then we finish.
And did you show this on purpose before lunch?
Correct. I thought, what will I end on? It will be food, because we're all hungry. Perfect time. If you're a food photographer, show your folio around lunchtime.
Oh my God, that's great. Yeah, make an 11 o'clock meeting time.
Yeah, 11:30, and then go, do you want to go out and have a bite to eat now? Yeah, sure. And then you get them out of their studio, out of their business, and you have a bite to eat. So
you are all about the strategy.
It's all about the strategy. So, in summing it up today, I mean, is there any questions before I rattle on?
Guys, please feel free. At this point, I think you have covered everything, and I love the pace at which you moved through those portfolios too, because what I normally do when I show things is it's like a video or something, and I go racing through. And
that's the other thing. That's a really good point, Liv. When you are showing your portfolio, whether you're in person or whether it's online, and I will do this. I will actually, if we're in person, I'll say, go out, knock on the door and come in and introduce yourself. Like, we will actually go through like an acting process of how to show your portfolio, because it's got to have a pace. It's got to be interesting. It's got to have energy. It's got to be, let's turn the page. What are we going to do next? This was a good story. It can't be boring. It can't be too long. It can't be too short. And the pace with portfolios, or whether the way that you show your own portfolio, is really important. It's all part of the theatrics of who you are as a photographer. It's part of the business of photography. It's the part of explaining things, but not, twittering on about them for too much, and losing people's attention span, because as Libby said, people are really busy these days. If you do have the fortunate, if you are fortunate enough to have the audience of somebody, it's often for 20 minutes. If somebody says to you, oh, look, I've got 5 minutes, do you know what I'd say? I'd say, okay, well, it's obviously not enough time. So if you want me to come back another time, I will, and you're being really rude, I would say in my head with my eyes. But 20 minutes to half an hour is a good amount of time, and you will find it will probably go into 40 minutes. You want to be there about 40 minutes in order to create a connection and to be able to tell that story and to get through. And that's why I base my 20 double page spreads on that, for that knowledge and that information. It, you know, we can, because everyone's busy, everyone has a deadline, everybody's in the middle of something, everybody has to be somewhere else. The greatest thing about COVID, which we haven't touched on, Lib, which I know you wanted me to quickly, and I've got 2 minutes.
Perfect. And like conclusion, I think,
is that it has made us all stop and breathe. And for me, what I did is I went back, thought what livens me and what deadens me. You know, what deadens me is, you know, people that, you know, I can't swear on here, so it's really hard for me because I swear all the time. So what livens me and what deadens me? What livens me is making a difference to people, inspiring them, exciting them, helping them, make them be the best that they can be. That is absolutely what livens me, whether they are in university or whether they're 60 years old, whether they're accountants that wanting to become photographers, or whether the photographers that have fallen out of love and need to be re-inspired, or they're photographers that are a bit lost, have lost their way a little bit, and reinvigorated. That is the essence of what livens me, and I spent a lot of time reconnecting with that over COVID, and putting a lot of energy into getting that message back out there. I feel like I got lost in recruitment and getting people jobs, which is fantastic, but yes, it's about getting jobs, but it's also about networking, and it's about making connections, and it's about getting messages out there, which is really important. Your portfolio is part of that message and part of your arsenal of who you are as a photographer, as is your website, and as are your EDMs, as is your social media. So it's about building blocks, and that has been a really important thing about COVID. Not sitting there and going, oh God, you know, the whole world's falling apart, which I know a lot of people have done. And yeah, the whole world has fallen apart, but at the beginning and the middle, at the end, communication is the key to what it is that we're doing. The world will always need photography. It will always need design and advertising. How and in what shape is yet to be determined. I think the biggest thing that we're going to have to look at with photography post-COVID and throughout COVID is how we are charging for things and budgeting, and also being a little bit more open to diversification as well, being more open to collaboration, working in teams perhaps a little bit more, and understanding that there's not going to be the budgets that there perhaps used to be. Maybe picking up a video camera as well is going to be, and learning another skill set to add to your photography is going to be really important. And diversifying and listening to your clients, asking lots of questions and making them feel really confident. I've used that word many, many times, but people are scared. People don't have a lot of money, and having the confidence to employ a photographer in the future is going to be up to you, not just in how good your work is, but how you present yourself. And that is a really important part about what I talk and work with photographers on. And post-COVID, it's going to be even more important. And having a rate card in your brain, or, you know, on your desktop is also equally important, to know what your worth is. But what is your worth going to be to a client that can't afford you, but is going to give you 6 jobs over the next 6 months because they need something shot monthly? So it's going to be about resetting that switch in your brain and negotiating and talking. And that's going to be the really important part about getting you through COVID, and having a fire in your belly, right? And wanting people to be around you and to work with you. Be they stylists, makeup artists, production managers, traffic managers in agencies. I just did a big personalised email to lots of agencies and design studios and corporate clients Thursday last week, and they've all written back and said, look, we're still working from home. We're not back in the studio or the office. We're not really sure what's going on. At the moment, we've got some things bubbling away. Things are bubbling away. So if you're just always a little bit like, here I am, can we have a chat? Can I show you this? What have you got? You know, that's going to be really important moving forward, so that you are in front of people's eyes all the time without stalking them. And that is an excellent segue for me to say how great the Brownbill effect is for that, because
I would have done that for you too, Sal, because can you just confirm that email you said you sent last week? That wasn't a Brownbill effect. You said you sent one to agencies and people like that. Was a separate one, but you do have the Brownbill effect. Yeah,
the Brownbill effect is an online creative directory where people pay a yearly subscription of $250 plus GST for the year. And it is a platform for you to have a profile, for us to network you out to a greater audience. And so we are very prolific on all forms of social media: Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, EDM's newsletters. You can sign up to receive the newsletter. If you are on the directory, it is a two-way street. It's about you feed us what you want us to get out there, and we will get it out there for you. And having those really solid networks where we know that the network that I have created on the directory, I know every single person on there. I can talk to you about them. I am emotionally invested in their work and in them. And I really enjoy having them part of, I guess it's the Brownbill family, if you like.
And it always comes through in all your communications, Sally. Like you,
Yep.
It is clear that you know these people and that you care about these people. And
I do. I really, I often say, you know, I wasn't selling dental instruments last week, and nor will I be selling cars next week. This is what I do. I love it. I love all elements of communication. I'm doing a lot of public speaking as well these days, just to talk to people. And I feel like a lot of my role these days is about motivation too, but having a network. Without a network, and even without all the other fabulous things that we've talked about today, it's your network, and it's the network you already have that can build your new network. It's like the human Facebook. What about that? Without that,
I used to always think, Sally, that Facebook was like a cheating system for people who couldn't network in person. In the very early days, I learned that there was a lot more to it, but that used to be my thing.
Absolutely. And the network with the Brownbill effect, it's massive and it's growing every day. So people that come onto the directory, some of the network might be the same as theirs, which is great because those same people are seeing things from the individual and from the Brownbill effect. But there's also this other massive network that goes right across the corporate sector: advertising, design, education, and photography. And on that note, when you are showing your portfolio, I feel like I've talked a lot about advertising agencies and design studios today, but I think moving forward, and certainly I've been doing it for about the last 5 years, direct clients are an absolute winner. And going to see direct clients and forming a relationship with marketing managers, owners, you know, heads of production within corporate companies is really important, because what we've seen over the last 10 years, a lot of the big agencies have sort of lost their way, perhaps. So I'm not going to say lost their way, but a lot of people have left there and have gone into organisations and started up their own in-house design studios or in-house advertising agencies.
Totally.
And those people don't tend to be as well connected as the advertising agency. So if you get in there with, you know, Sally or John, the marketing manager, and they like you, they will get you in and they will get you into different departments, or they will get you to do all of their work, and then they will tell a friend who will tell a friend, and there all of a sudden your network starts building. I mean, my network started off when I came back from London in 1994 by ringing people and telling them I had a few photographers. And those people I'm still in connection with. I'm still working with them. In fact, 2 of them today work in my business and help me. They're creative directors and they work and oversee. We're just revamping my website that's going to be coming up in the next couple of months. But they've been working with me on knowing what the industry wants, certainly knowing who I am. And the core of it is about getting your message across in a really clear, concise way. And what Libby said, everything that I send out is about, it's got a sense of conviction about it. It's got a sense of confidence, and I just love what I do, you know, and that's what you have to be doing as a photographer.
And that's why I loved having you on board here today, Sal. You know, I've wanted to do this for a long time. And I think what will be just to make your information available, and in the next few days, let's say maybe either Friday or early next week, what I'll do is I'll send an email out to everybody who has been on board today, and I'll send the link to the webinar recording so you can step through it again if you'd like at your own pace. I will add a link into the Brownbill effect and confirm your offer that you mentioned before on the 25% off. And I might just outline the different services, like you talked about, the 3 to 4 hour portfolio review session. But then what's the name of the session where you sit down with them and you talk through it and tell the stories? Is that part of that 3 to 4 hour session?
No, it's a 2-hour consultation. And in fact, what I'll do, Lib, is I'll send you a couple of PDFs that you will have, so that then you can you can read them, and then you can send those messages out. So they have all of the consultations on them. And I can also send you information about being on the creative directory here, or we also have an assistant register as well. So this is people that are wanting to get assisting work, or if your photographer's out there and you're wanting an assistant to work on a job, you can go directly to this site and you can find all the assistance that you need.
Okay, and so one more question. You talked before about, you know, coming out of COVID and the things that you need to do, and you gave lots of ideas on that. Is there a section or a blog post or something on the website people can go to for that, or has it just appeared in like newsletters? Because I see information on that in your newsletters.
Yeah, so at the moment, that's a really great question. At the moment, I actually have another website which will be incorporated into the Brownbill effect. That's what we're doing at the moment, and it's the website which is all about creative recruitment. And in here we've got a Sally Stories section which will be going over onto it. And in there, in this particular website, there's all sorts of stories about you know, how to prepare for an interview, how to pull a portfolio together, take your aim at your next big thing, why your website needs a makeover, why creativity will become even more important. Cool. So I write a lot of stuff on there. All of it is on, so Sally Brownbill LinkedIn, and everything else is the Brownbill effect. But all these stories will be coming over, and they're going to be called Sally's Insights, we've decided.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe depending on when that's available, we'll either link to the existing page or to the one when it's integrated. But I'll communicate with you offline about those details.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Liv. I've had fun.
Oh, it's beautiful. The imagery is gorgeous. I'm certainly going to be looking up Alice Healy and Nicola Bernardi's work to go and have a closer look. So much wisdom and so much genuine, you know, desire to help people. Thank you, Sal. And thank you to our lovely attendees who have quite a few of them have said, thanks, great talk. Thanks for sharing your time and knowledge today. So much good advice. So it's been lovely to have everybody on board. And if you are interested, there are 2 more webinars that I've got lined up. One in a fortnight from today with a guy called Mark Rosetto, who is amazing at marketing. So it's just a general marketing 101 for photographers, which I think is exceptionally important in our kind of COVID, you know, coming out of the cocoon era. And Sal, you've touched on a lot of that anyway today, thank you. But Mark will be talking more about it. Then 2 weeks after that, I'll be doing one on how to self-publish a photo book with some never before released information, because I'm surveying a few people in the industry about it too. So just keep your eye on the newsletters. As I mentioned, you will get an email from me with a link to the recording from today. But if you ever want to see any of our webinar recordings, just head to the events page on Memento Pro and you'll find them there. And yes, we hope to see you again.
Thanks, guys. Go forth, have fun, and just be individual. That is the biggest, most important thing in a cracking portfolio. Woohoo!
Thank you, Sal. You're a star. And I'll be on time.
Safe flight home.
Thank you. Off to the airport. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for having me.